A secret binder handed to political influencers, a list that appears one day and vanishes the next. A jailed defendant suddenly transferred after a mysterious meeting, and a White House that warns Congress that transparency itself would be a hostile act. This isn't a thriller or a work of fiction, it's unfolding right now inside America's most powerful institutions. For 9 months, members of Congress have been demanding answers about the Epstein files, who controlled them, who blocked their release, and who might be named inside. Yet every time the truth seemed ready to break through, the story twisted in a new direction.
I'm going to tell you what I'm doing this afternoon, but I can assure you that...
But there's the free speech hearing. You're not going to tell me what you're doing this afternoon?
Free speech is one thing, discretion's quite another, too.
Okay. All right, so you're leaving to have lunch with the president. So, Mr. Farage, I have a question. Have you heard about the Epstein thing that's going on here?
I have.
You have? What do you think about it?
I'm not going to give comment on anything happening in America. I'm here as a witness.
Perfect.
I'm here as a witness.
I'm
here as a witness for what is happening in the United Kingdom and in the European.
Perfect. Let me just go through it. So it's been 9 months, right, since we've been meeting in these hearings. We've not had Pam Bondi here, even though we have jurisdiction over the Department of Justice. Not Dan Bungie.
The gentleman yield.
Not Kash Patel. I will 100%. We'll go back and forth. Let me just do my thing.
Okay. Well, I'm just going to correct. Kash Patel's coming in 2. I'll give you an extra 10 seconds. Kash Patel, the director of FBI, is coming in 2 weeks, and the Attorney General's coming in 4 weeks.
Fantastic. But still, we're not doing that this week. The week we're having votes on the Epstein thing. So, you know, Pam Bondi gives the influencers, these Republican influencers, a binder. It says Part 1 of the Epstein files. No one of you saw it. It was quite spectacular. The Attorney General then says the Epstein list is on her desk. Then DOJ issues a memo, says there is no list. Then, you have any questions about any of that? We've had no hearings on any of that at all. That, the list is on my desk, then there is no list. Then we gave binders to Republican influencers. This committee's had no questions on any of how that transpired at the Department of Justice. Then hold on.
Well, it sounds like you're going to in the next few weeks. So that's a jolly good thing.
Mr. Farage, we can talk soon, but not yet. Okay. Right. So then the president comes out and says the whole thing's a hoax. He blasts his own base. He blames Barack Obama. I mean, he hasn't been president for a very long time. Republicans then in committee vote against the release in the Rules Committee. Then Republicans refuse to go back in the Rules Committee because they're getting blasted for their vote, getting crushed by their own base. Congress leaves a day early. Then the administration sends the Deputy Attorney General to meet with Maxwell in jail. He happens to be Trump's former personal attorney. She says something favorable about the president. Miraculously, she gets transferred to a minimum security prison. The president starts talking about how he has the right to pardon her if he wanted to. The leaks to the Wall Street Journal then stop. We come back from break. We have the Massey petition. Comer does a document dump where 97% of these documents are already public. How long has he had those documents? Why hasn't he released them for the last 6 weeks? Does it the day of the vote. Then Republicans drop a non-binding resolution trying to kill the Massey discharge petition. The White House said passing the Massey discharge petition is a hostile act. Wow. That's a lot of distraction and deflection and misinformation. Wait, passing a discharge petition to release the Epstein files, the White House said would be a hostile act. Nope, we have no questions about that. But why? Why is it that we're spending so much political capital to keep this list from coming out? You think the list should come out? You think we should know the people who dealt with Mr. Epstein, Mr. Farage?
I thought I was coming to a hearing on free speech, not process.
Oh, well, listen, but here's the good...
It sounds like you're discussing process.
No. Do you think the list should come out?
I have no opinion on it. I don't know at all.
So we have victims that were sexually abused by potentially people in power, and we don't know who's on the list.
I'm very happy.
Hold on, Mr. Farage. We don't know who's on the list. We don't know.
We
don't know who's on the list. We don't know if the president is or is not. I'm not going to say he is or isn't. I'm just going to say these are weird behaviors. We don't know that there aren't other people in Congress that are on the list. Right? We have no idea. Do you think the list should come out? You think people in power should be held to account for these victims who have been sexually abused and assaulted? You think the list should come out?
I think that I'm very happy to come to a different hearing where you talk about legal process.
Okay.
But
Will the
today-
gentleman yield for a quick question?
I will stick
to
Were
free
you
speech.
aware that he has already called for the Epstein file to be released? It has been reported that he has called for it to be released.
Oh yeah, right here, just to refresh your memory.
Yeah, but it's-
I
yes.
happen to have this.
But that's not
How
what
random.
But that is not. Look, you can ask me if you like about
Do you agree
social
with
security
yourself?
policy.
Do you agree with yourself?
We are here to
you-
discuss free speech.
Hold on, it's awkward for your lunch after this? Do you agree with yourself?
No, it isn't at all.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I'm just curious. This committee has jurisdiction over the
Gentleman's
Department of
time.
Justice.
Yeah.
Why have we allowed Comer to cover this up for the last couple of months?
As I said,
why is this committee not
I
taking
said 6
jurisdiction?
weeks ago that we will have the FBI director in, we will have the attorney general in, and we are doing that in 2 weeks. You can ask you can go through that whole list. That whole list, you can do whatever you want to do with, I got lots of questions for the FBI director, including the whistleblower who came forward and told him that Adam Schiff leaked classified information. I want to ask him about that as well as the issues you all want to ask him about. That's why he's coming, so we can ask all these questions and follow the process, as Mr. Farage just talked about.
Mr.
The
Chairman,
gentleman from Virginia.
unanimous consent.
Unanimous consent?
I'd like to enter the political article into the record that Mr. Farage said the Epstein file should be released.
Without objection. The gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
I thank the chairman. I want to talk about censorship tools that are being used by Europe and protectionist measures that have major consequences for U.S. companies and free expression.
First there was a promise, the list is on my desk. Then came the denial, there is no list. Then came binders leaked not to investigators but to influencers. And when questions reached a boiling point, a high-profile transfer and a sudden silence followed. The victims were promised justice, the public was promised answers. But what we've seen instead is a pattern of secrecy, delay and distraction that raises one chilling question: what is so dangerous about these files that every lever of power seems determined to keep them hidden? It all started in a way that almost felt too strange to be real. During what was supposed to be a routine free speech hearing, a congressman suddenly turned the spotlight on something much bigger, the Epstein files. He asked a simple question: have you heard about the Epstein thing that's going on here? The witness, a foreign official, admitted he had heard about it but immediately shut down any further comment. He insisted he wasn't there to talk about America, only his own country. That silence raised the first red flag. Why avoid even a basic opinion on one of the most controversial cases in recent history? The moment felt awkward, almost staged, like everyone in the room knew there was a giant elephant sitting right in front of them, but no one wanted to admit it. Instead of digging deeper, the hearing quickly shifted back into safe territory, leaving the question hanging in the air, and that's exactly what made it so unsettling. A case that has haunted headlines for years suddenly slipped into the conversation, only to be pushed aside as if it didn't belong. But if Congress wasn't ready to address it directly, what else were they trying to avoid? Because what happened next would only raise more questions. The next twist came straight out of a political drama. Instead of Congress holding hearings and releasing information through official channels, former Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi stepped into the spotlight. Reports claim she personally handed Republican influencers a binder labeled Epstein Files Part 1. Think about that for a moment. Not lawmakers, not investigators, not even oversight committees, but influencers. A move that seemed designed more for headlines than for justice. And while cameras flashed and speculation grew, something even stranger happened. The Attorney General announced that the infamous Epstein list was sitting right on her desk. That statement alone shook Washington, finally confirmation that the files existed. But within days, the Department of Justice completely reversed course, issuing a memo saying there was no list at all. 1 week the files were real. The next week they apparently didn't exist. Which version was true, and why was the message changing so quickly? For the victims, this wasn't just political theater, it was personal. Each conflicting statement sent shockwaves of doubt. Was justice being served or carefully managed? And just when the contradictions seemed impossible to ignore, Congress itself got pulled into a battle that would only make things even murkier. Because the next chapter turned the controversy into outright chaos. When it finally came time for Congress to act, things spiraled into pure political chaos. A vote was held in the Rules Committee on whether to release the Epstein files, and shockingly, Republicans voted against making them public. The backlash was immediate and brutal. Their own base, the very people who had been demanding transparency, turned on them overnight. Suddenly lawmakers were ducking the spotlight, avoiding cameras and scrambling for cover. Some even refused to return to the committee room at all, terrified of the political firestorm that was erupting around them. Within hours, Congress adjourned early, slipping quietly out of Washington as anger boiled over across the country. To make matters worse, the president himself only fanned the flames. Instead of addressing the files, he called the entire controversy a hoax, even going so far as to blame former President Barack Obama, a move that baffled both allies and critics alike. So here was the reality: Congress refusing to face the issue, leaders dismissing it outright, and victims left in the shadows. Every attempt at answers only created more confusion, more deflection, and more mistrust. But if that chaos wasn't enough, what happened behind prison walls would send the controversy into a whole new level of suspicion. And this part left even seasoned insiders stunned. Just when it looked like the firestorm couldn't get any worse, the focus suddenly shifted inside prison walls. Reports revealed that the Deputy Attorney General, someone who just happened to be a former personal attorney for the president, quietly visited Ghislaine Maxwell in jail. That alone was extraordinary. A high-ranking DOJ official meeting directly with a convicted associate of Jeffrey Epstein. It didn't feel routine, it felt calculated. And then came the twist. Not long after that meeting, Maxwell was transferred out of her facility and moved into a lower security prison. To many observers, it looked less like coincidence and more like a reward. Almost immediately, whispers spread that she had offered favorable words about the president during that same time period. Then came an even bigger bombshell: the president openly floated the idea that he had the right to pardon her if he wanted to. Imagine the signal that sent, not just to the public, but to every survivor waiting for accountability. Instead of closure, they were watching the most powerful people in the country talk about leniency. That combination, a private meeting, a suspicious transfer, and talk of a potential pardon, sparked one question that could no longer be ignored. What deal, if any, was being made behind closed doors? After the prison transfer, the fight shifted back to Capitol Hill. Congressman Thomas Massie pushed forward a discharge petition, an attempt to force the release of the Epstein files, no matter how hard leadership tried to stall. For a moment it looked like a breakthrough. The public was ready, the pressure was mounting, and the documents were finally coming out. But when the files dropped, the excitement collapsed into frustration. Nearly 97% of the material had already been public for years. It wasn't a treasure trove of hidden names or shocking revelations, it was mostly recycled documents, old filings, and scraps of information people had seen before. That raised a critical question: if they had these papers all along, why hold them back until the very day of the vote? Why stage a release that looked dramatic but delivered almost nothing new? To many it seemed like a deliberate tactic: dump old material to create the illusion of transparency while keeping the real files locked away. Then came the most chilling statement yet. The White House declared that pushing the discharge petition and demanding full release of the Epstein files would be treated as a hostile act. If revealing the truth is hostile, then who exactly are they protecting? And the answer may lie in the people forgotten in this entire spectacle, the survivors themselves. Lost in all the noise, the backroom deals, and the political spin, are the people who matter most, the survivors. For years they've lived with the weight of trauma, waiting for the system to deliver accountability. They were told the truth would eventually come out, that those in power would finally face exposure. But each delay, each contradiction, each claim that there is no list, feels like another betrayal. For survivors, this isn't abstract politics. Every time leaders dismiss the case as a hoax or play games with documents, it reopens wounds that never fully healed. Trust in justice fades a little more. Hope that powerful abusers will ever be named slips further away. And while the Department of Justice insists it must protect privacy, many can't help but wonder whose privacy is really being protected. The innocent victims, or the influential names who fear exposure? That question sits at the heart of the controversy. Because if this was truly about safeguarding victims, there are ways to do it: redactions, secure briefings, and carefully managed releases. But when secrecy looks more like obstruction, suspicion becomes unavoidable. And that's why the fight isn't just about files or politics, it's about whether survivors will ever see real justice. The answer lies in how oversight is handled next. If Congress were serious about uncovering the truth, the path forward wouldn't be complicated. Oversight isn't about political theater, it's about process, accountability, and proof. And there are 3 basic steps that could cut through the chaos right now. First, demand a secure classified-style briefing. Members of Congress and cleared staff could review the Epstein files in full, with all sensitive details about survivors protected. No leaks, no games, just straight access to the facts. Second, create a chain of custody log. Every document should be tracked, showing exactly who had access to it, when, and under what authority. That's standard practice in any real investigation, and it would immediately expose whether files are being hidden or manipulated for political convenience. Third, appoint an independent reviewer, an inspector general or special counsel, whose sole job is to determine whether decisions around these files were lawful, ethical, and free from interference. Once that's done, release the results to the public with the proper redactions. These steps wouldn't just provide answers, they'd rebuild trust, they'd prove whether secrecy was really about protecting survivors or about shielding the powerful, but until those steps are taken, suspicion will only grow. And that's why the next move doesn't just fall on Congress, it falls on the public. Here's the hard truth, Congress rarely acts on its own. Real change almost always comes when the public refuses to stay silent. And that means this fight isn't only happening in courtrooms or committee rooms, it's happening in living rooms, on phones, and across social media. So what can ordinary people do? First, demand that your representatives call for a secure briefing on the Epstein files. They work for you, and they need to hear that secrecy isn't acceptable. One phone call, one email, or one public post can make a bigger impact than most people realize. Second, press for answers about custody and decisions. Who met with Ghislaine Maxwell? Who ordered her prison transfer? Why were contradictory statements made about the list? These aren't conspiracy theories, they're basic questions of accountability, and Congress owes the public real explanations. Third, support survivor advocacy groups and independent journalists who are still digging into the details, flight logs, bank records, and court filings. Their work keeps pressure alive and prevents powerful names from quietly slipping away, because without pressure, the story stalls. And without public attention, the files risk being buried forever. But if the public keeps the spotlight burning, the system has no choice but to respond. When you step back and look at the timeline, it's impossible to see this as a series of coincidences. A binder handed to influencers, a list that appeared, then vanished. Conflicting statements from the DOJ, a prison visit from a high-ranking official, followed by a suspicious transfer, a document dump where almost everything was already public, and a White House warning that pushing for transparency would be treated as a hostile act. That isn't clarity, it's chaos. And in chaos, truth is easy to bury, but here's the key, this doesn't have to end in silence. Responsible transparency exists. Files can be released in ways that protect victims while exposing enablers. Independent reviews can cut through the politics and deliver facts. Survivors deserve more than recycled talking points and political games, they deserve justice. And for the public, this moment is bigger than one case. It's about whether institutions serve the people or protect the powerful. Every delay, every contradiction, every sudden reversal chips away at trust. That's why pressure matters. That's why voices matter, because the real question isn't whether the Epstein files exist. The real question is whether those in power ever intended for you to see them. So don't let the story fade, share it, talk about it, and demand accountability, because silence only serves those who fear exposure.